So just take a moment and let yourself settle. Just notice the shape your body is in, the weight of your body, the contact with the seat. Feel the floor underneath your feet. Sense the presence of the earth underneath the building. And orient yourself where you are, what's around you, the trees, the water, the mountains, the rivers, the ocean, and the land that you're on, who the first people of this land was protected and stewarded, guarded, tended by. And as we connect with the space that we're in and the land that we're on and our own bodies, let's let your attention begin to collect. And as your attention begins to collect, allow yourself to settle with an anchor that you can continue to return to. Could be your breath, could be the sounds, the awareness, the quality that knows, whatever is familiar, comfortable to you. And when your attention is filled or preoccupied or pulled, all that's needed is to notice and return to the anchor. No need for judgment, no need even to have an opinion about it. Just to notice and to connect and to return. And see if in staying with the anchor, you can notice that your body begins to soften and tension starts to fall away, not because you're trying to make it happen that way. Just the natural result of gathering attention and settling. Now, wherever you are in your meditation, I want to invite you to bring your attention to your right foot. Feel your right foot. Very slowly move up to your ankle. And then your lower right leg. And then your right knee. Just sensing, feeling, noticing. Moving up your right thigh. Until your attention settles in your right hip joint. And from your right hip, go to your right hand. And the right wrist. Moving up the right forearm. To the elbow. The right upper arm. Right shoulder joint. Socket. And moving across your shoulders, your left shoulder joint and socket. Down your left upper arm. To the elbow and the forearm. To the wrist and the left hand. Moving from the left hand to the left hip socket. Down the left thigh. To the left knee. And down the left lower leg to the ankle. And then the left foot. Now both feet together. Both hands together. Both hands and arms together. Both feet and legs together. Now, hands and feet and legs and arms together. And now while we're sensing, we simultaneously include listening. Sounds in the room, out of the room, on the street. 。 . 。 . 。 . 。. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . without losing contact with the sensing. Now very, very slowly open your eyes, just a tiny, tiny fraction. So there's the first bit of color, shape, and form, just a bit. And just notice how eyesight is so compelling. It pulls attention through your eyeballs, grabs hold of things. So that's the tendency, and what we want to do is relax in the sensing and the listening and let the sight land rather than pull. So when you have the capacity to let the sight land rather than pull, and you're still feeling your arms and legs and listening, then open your eyes a little bit more above the screen. And just let in the sight, the color, the form, the shape, while you're still sensing and listening, letting the sight land. Now this experience of sensing, listening, and looking, where we are connected to what we're experiencing, is the invitation of how we're going to spend the rest of the evening together. So whether you're listening to me talking, whether we're in a discussion, same thing. Most of your attention is with your sensing, listening, and looking. Okay, so just take a moment and stretch. And is everyone hearing me okay? Good enough? Good enough for bears? Awesome. Great. So we set the place up, and Elijah didn't come. We've got lots of extra seats, and they're not occupied. So here's some chat messages, and what are they saying? It's a little hard to hear even with my volume up. Okay, so let's try this. If I do that, is that better? Yeah, okay, great. So I want to begin this evening with where this work comes from. I'll give you a little bit of sense of how I got here and why I have some of the thoughts and feelings that I do, and kind of the background of the map that I'm going to speak about. So I walked into class on Religions of India at UC Santa Cruz when I was 17. That was a few years ago. Within a week, I knew I wanted spiritual life to be the center of my world. Like, without a doubt. Within a month, I wanted to be a Buddhist nun. From that first class at UC Santa Cruz with Jack Engler, I started doing 10-day intensive meditation retreats, and then I did a 3-month retreat. And after 9 years of daily practice, and every year a 10-day retreat, I joined a monastery. And in that monastery, every winter, we had 3 months of retreat, and a month in the summer, and several 10-day retreats each year. So I had the occasion to count up all of the hours of meditation that I've done, and it's over 50,000 hours of meditation. The tradition that I ordained into was renowned for its depth. And at the heart of the teaching is something that we referred to as the deathless, what isn't born and what doesn't die. The non-dual ground that is already here. This wasn't a philosophical concept. It was woven into the teachings, the culture, the way we lived. And our teacher could speak about it the way you describe your hand, or a cup, or something extremely familiar. It was immediate, and he could transmit it, and people could have direct experience of this in his presence. In that extended international community, I knew a senior monk, and for the sake of this, I will call him Kemavaso. He was devoted to the tradition. He was a leader in the community. He was disciplined, he was warm, he was trusted. He also had served in combat, and at some point, about 20 years into his monastic life, what he'd carried started to surface. Nightmares, panic, fear that wouldn't settle no matter what he did. He went to his teacher, and his teacher's response was, "Snap out of it. You know how to meditate." So perhaps he meant, you have the tools and I believe in you, but that is not at all what landed. So not long after this event with his teacher, he left his robes folded neatly in a room with a very short note, climbed out of the third floor window, scaled the outside of the building, walked away from his monastic life. And when I spoke to him a year later, I asked, "Why did you leave like that? Without conversation, without a goodbye?" And his response to me was, if I had to face him, I would have punched him in the face. 6 months later at his memorial, a woman cried out and said, "What on earth happened that made him leave like that?" Nobody answered. The story was never told. And even from his own experience, not a single word about his years as a monk appeared in his memoir. Decades erased. Kemavaso's story wasn't the only reason I began asking these questions. Eventually they became my own. How is it possible that decades of genuine practice can leave certain places untouched? That question led me to a different map. If any of you who've got your videos off want to turn them on, that just helps me know that I'm talking to people. Thank you. So I want to talk about a framework, and I suspect that many of you will already sense what's coming, but I want to let the framework confirm what your own personal practice has shown you. So my working hypothesis developed after all these years of practice, 47 years of practice, and more than 30 years of teaching, is that realization and wholeness are not the same thing. Awakening is not one thing. There are many openings, many recognitions, many shifts that deserve the name awakening. We discover that we can choose where our attention goes. We discover we're not identical to our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations. we discover love, compassion, joy. They're not simply states that we cultivate, but we can see them as qualities that are already here. It's what we feel when the obscurations are released. And then there's something else that we discover, the kind of shift that changes the way you relate to everything. What the Theravadan tradition calls the irreversible stages of liberation, where you cannot return to the same way you were before. What Ramana Maharshi calls the sahaja samadhi, the natural, effortless condition that's no longer a passing experience, but the ground itself. What Dzogchen calls the recognition of Rigpa, the deathless, recognized as the living ground of experience. So for me, these experiences of awakening eventually allowed me to consider another question. How does realization become a station rather than a visitation? So awakenings are real. They matter. They profoundly transform what we experience. And human development continues. Because authentic realization does not automatically reach everything. We can have genuine experiences of opening, of awakening, of liberation, of seeing the nature of our mind. And it doesn't shift emotional patterns, defensive structures, nervous systems adaptations formed through relationship and survival. They can all remain. Not because the awakening wasn't real, but because these things, these patterns, were formed through different developmental processes, and they require different conditions to resolve. So realization and wholeness are not identical movements. For many of us. And both of them matter. So it is not a failure of awakening. It's a misunderstanding of what awakening does and does not transform on its own. And so there are three domains that I have discovered where the fruit of meditation often doesn't reach. One is trauma. Trauma is the residue of what was too much, too fast, too overwhelming for the nervous system to process. It lives in the body not only as memory, but as unfinished response. Some of the traumas we experienced formed before we had an inner ability to observe, making sense of what was happening. Some of what we carry is inherited. It isn't even what we've lived through directly. Some of it is what we live through vicariously. Some of it is built into the systems that we are part of. And when someone is in a trauma activation outside of their window of tolerance, the first thing to go offline is the capacity to observe. The very capacity that meditation depends upon. So what trauma requires first is safety, co-regulation, and titration, a carefully paced return to being able to manage what is happening. Safety first, regulation next, and awareness can follow. So Kemavaso's teacher didn't offer that. I don't believe it was because he was trying to be cruel or intended cruelty. I think it was because he had no framework for what he was looking at. And so we can imagine, or I can imagine, that if he had said to this monk, "Thank you for trusting me.
What you're describing sounds completely overwhelming. You're not to blame. Even with all of your meditation, the first thing that goes offline is the capacity to observe. I don't know how to help you through this, but I'm committed to finding someone who can. Meanwhile, let's stay in regular contact. That would have been a trauma-informed response. The teacher doesn't need to have clinical skills. He only needs to recognize that what's in front of him is beyond what meditation alone can reach, and that finding the right help is itself an act of wisdom and care. He doesn't need how to do it. He needs to know that it needs to happen. So trauma is one of the things that meditation ordinarily doesn't resolve on its own. The second is attachment wounding. So in Buddhist language, attachment usually refers to grasping, the clinging that perpetuates suffering. This is the thing that in Buddhism we're wanting to find the end of, release, reduce, because it is the source of all the suffering that we can relate to, or find, or point to. But attachment as a psychological term means something very different. Attachment is the bond formed with early caregivers. Secure attachment develops when there's enough safety, attunement, warmth, delight, and encouragement. Attachment wounding arises when there is insufficient of these basic needs over time. The attachment that we have with our caregivers is fundamental to our health, to our thriving, to our sense of well-being, to how much sense of vigilance we have, or sense of inner safety we have, to how we view ourselves, to how we view others, to how the relationships we have form and shape. It has an enormous impact. And what heals attachment wounding isn't insight. It's experiencing these 5 qualities in relationship, being met, seen, and valued in ways that slowly rewire the nervous system's expectation about what love and safety mean. Not as ideas, but as direct living experiences. A teacher can have deep realization into emptiness and still carry attachment wounds. Seeing through the illusion of self doesn't automatically create the capacity for emotional attunement. The nervous system learned its patterns in relationship. It updates them in relationship. No amount of cushion time substitutes for that. So there's trauma, there's attachment wounding, and the third one is narcissistic wounding. This is perhaps the most subtle of the 3, and it's often the most difficult to recognize, especially in spiritual communities. I'm not talking about narcissistic personality disorder. I'm talking about something almost all of us know intimately, the feeling of being not quite enough, not good enough, not lovable enough, not accomplished enough, not awake enough. Alma describes this as a nearly universal stage of human development. As children, we gradually lose touch with our direct experience of our own essential value and aliveness because these qualities were not consistently recognized and mirrored. And so we adapted. We built an identity around what earned love, approval, safety, and recognition. And when our parents didn't see our essential nature, we lost contact with it ourselves. And as we lost contact with it ourselves, we lost contact with something immediate, alive, and fundamental. And this pattern, this sense of deficiency, not enoughness, a hollowness at our core, can remain even after genuine experiences of realization. So we can see the nature of the mind clearly, and this can still exist. Awakening reveals who we are beyond our history and our identity, but it doesn't automatically reorganize the psychological structures that develop to protect us from shame, inadequacy, or rejection. So when these structures remain unexamined, whether in practitioners or teachers, they shape how we respond to feedback, to disagreement, to uncertainty. And in spiritual communities, it can gradually shift the culture. Loyalty begins to outweigh honest inquiry. Questions become more difficult to ask. People slowly lose confidence in their own direct experience. And rarely this comes from ill intent. It arises from ordinary human conditioning in contact with power and idealization. A teacher may have genuine realization, transmit profound truth, and still carry developmental wounds that affect community around them. So realization and developmental integration are different movements, and one does not necessarily guarantee the other. It is exceptionally rare to have awakening move across all of these domains. So, as it turns out, I didn't learn about these things reading about them. I didn't learn in the library. I didn't learn from watching the movies. I spent 28 years as a Buddhist nun. I love the life, the simplicity, the discipline. I love the depth of what was possible in a container devoted to ethical integrity, service, and realization. And despite decades of practice, there were experiences where the impact of meditation hadn't resolved. And one of the ways that this showed up was that for 15 years, for months at a time, I didn't want to live. I kept practicing. I kept teaching. I kept finding tools that were helping me and others. And at night, there were times when I would just pray, please, just let me die. I began doing attachment repair work, and that shifted something that I hadn't expected. The attachment repair work shifted the belief that I was fundamentally flawed, which had organized my inner life forever. It had always been there. So even though I could touch these wide open, spacious places, even though I could speak articulately about who we were fundamentally, I would come back to this baseline where I felt that there was something in me that was fundamentally flawed. And then after doing the attachment work, this simply stopped arising. It's not that I could see it clearly. It stopped showing up. And even still, I wanted to die. So it taught me something important, that these wounds are related, but they are not the same. The attachment wounding is not the same as the narcissistic wound. In April 2024, my doctor called and said, I've got metastatic cancer. And my first response was relief. Finally, I had a blameless way out. But in that crucible, when death was on my doorstep, I turned towards life. And as I made that choice, I was able to turn towards something that I'd never been able to face before, the narcissistic wound. And I can only describe it as an abyss, a deficient emptiness that no amount of meditation, no amount of being good, no amount of meditation, no amount of validation could fill. I couldn't approach it before because I didn't have enough stability. I didn't have enough ego strength. So the attachment work had given me the stability, had given me enough of a place of knowing that I was okay, that I had value, worth, as an ego position, not as an ultimate reality. I don't know what's happening, but something is happening. Hang on a second. We have the sound effects coming from a speaker. I'm going to go over and turn it off. Just one moment. I always find it kind of hilarious when the universe creates sound effects to punctuate. So when I finally was able to turn towards that emptiness, when I stopped running from it, from I stopped placating it, from I stopped trying to meditate it away, from I stopped distracting myself from it, it became a doorway. And the amazing thing was that on the other side of what I had spent my entire life running from was spacious awareness, the luminous radiance of my own being. So Ramana Maharshi spoke about Sahaja Samadhi, the natural condition that no longer comes and goes. And I found that distinction enormously helpful because it points to a question many long-term practitioners eventually encounter. What allows realization to become increasingly continuous rather than occasional? So in the non-dual traditions that many of us love, Advaita, Dzogchen, the direct path, the deathless, the pointing is towards something that's already here, it's already present, it's not constructed, it's not achieved, it's not the result of effort. And that pointing is true. The difficulty is that for many people, that recognition begins as a state, as a visit. Something that opens and then closes, something that has to be returned to. A state is something that arises and passes. A station is where you live. So in my experience, it is not simply more meditation that allows realization to stabilize. It's the gradual integration of the whole organism. When trauma is still running the nervous system, presence is interrupted by survival responses. Awareness opens, and then something triggers, and the body pulls back into protection. And in that protected state, we don't have the same access. Then we're not feeling that. When our attachment wounds remain unaddressed, we cannot fully be here because part of us is always monitoring. We're managing the relational field. We're scanning for danger. We're calculating how much of ourselves is safe to show. When we're doing all of that, when we're scanning, when we're managing, when we're vigilant, our attention is not wide open. We are protected. We are looking for danger. When the narcissistic wound remains unhealed, the sense of deficient emptiness, not emptiness in the Buddhist sense that is wide open and spacious, but deficient, hollow, barren. It acts as a gravitational field. It pulls everything towards it. It organizes practice around the wound rather than beyond it. So even genuine realization can be recruited into the service of self-protection. And we can see that sometimes with teachers who have profound realization, and yet sometimes they use their position as a teacher in addition to helping others to help get narcissistic supplies to make them feel okay about themselves. And those two things can exist simultaneously. One does not negate the realization that they have. So the other work, relational, somatic, developmental, does not replace meditation. It clears what repeatedly interrupts presence. And the presence that we develop, that we access, that we see, is a profound asset in our developmental work. And so in the middle of doing all of this, when we're in the trenches, when we're shit shoveling, we can remember this is what I'm experiencing, it's not who I am. And so many of us have touched profound states, and the deeper question is, what remains available in the middle of conflict, loneliness, illness, intimacy, disappointment, and ordinary life? What stays in the midst of the crazy world that we are living in the middle of? What remains? So non-dual awareness, presence, unconditioned love, these were never meant to be places we visit. They're meant to point to what is already here, to what we are made of. A station, not a visitation. And when we combine our meditation with developmental work in a way that supports integration, it becomes possible to return to the radiance of your own being as a resting place, not as a visitation, but that's where you are abiding from. That's what you know. So what happens when someone has meditated for decades and still suffering in ways that their practice hasn't touched? When we look at the monk's story and my own, we look at both the profound gifts that practice can offer and the places where insight alone doesn't reach. Some of what we are dealing with formed before we had language. It imprinted our body. It was there in early relationships, in the patterns we developed simply to survive. Trauma, attachment wounds, the ordinary narcissism that lives in all of us. These rarely dissolve through awareness alone, through meditation alone. They usually require different kind of attention. But the good news is that with the right support, we can become not only more aware, but more whole, more real, more alive, more available to the depth of our own practice. Non-dual awareness was never meant to be a place we visit. It was always meant to be a place we live, a description of who we are. And it's the outer work, the somatic work, the releasing the trauma, the developmental work, the relational work, the having the ego strength to be able to turn to the narcissistic wound and recognize that the deficient emptiness that we had been running our whole lives is a doorway into the luminous presence of our own being. So this is what I have to offer for you this evening. And I'd like to transition and open this up for questions, for comments, for inquiry. And I'm going to change it so that you can speak and put things in chat. So what I'd like is if you raise your electronic hand, because that will be easier, and then I can call on you. And you can also put things in chat. Arthur.
Holy guacamole. I'm glad you recorded that. I could listen to that over and over and over. I never joined a monastery, but I've been a pretty hardcore meditator for 30 plus years, and that's I came to similar conclusions, not as eloquently stated as you, that there were some things that meditation can't touch. And so just first of all, thank you. Thank you. I'm very, very grateful I found you and your work. I was really fascinated. You talked about how when an activation happens, observation goes. And so, but then I think you kind of said it kind of I heard it as a sequence: observation, regulation, and safety. So I've learned different ways to regulate myself, and that's very helpful. But but I've never thought of like, how do I bring myself to safety? I've never even heard of, obviously I've thought of that as the goal, but I've never, like in the middle of an activation, how does one create a sense of safety? Like I know all these techniques to kind of chill out the nervous system, but I've never heard that mentioned, and I found that fascinating.
Thank you, Arthur. So first of all, activations have small, medium, large, and off the charts. And so when we're in a small activation, we still have the observational powers. In a medium observation, still, but less. When it's large, we're getting outside of our window of tolerance. And one of the characteristics of being outside of your window of tolerance is that your observational capacity is the first thing that goes offline. Mm-hmm. So, and one of the things also is your prefrontal cortex. So all of the things that you remember or know of the tool, right. The first thing that goes off is all of the list of the things that help. So we need to kind of have like a body-based memory that helps us remember, because we can't remember cognitively. Mm-hmm. So part of it is, and it sounds like you have developed skills that when you get activated in different levels of activation, you have ways of bringing yourself back. So the back is back into the window of tolerance where what you're experiencing is manageable. All right? Mm-hmm. Now, one of the first things that happens when we're moving out of our window of tolerance is the profound experience that lack of safety. Like the whole fight, flight, freeze response is the system, is the neurological patterning around, this is not safe. This is so not safe that I can't even stay present with what's happening. Okay? So safety comes after coming back into our window of tolerance, after cooling the nervous system, after titration, after co-regulation, then we can begin to feel, oh, okay, what was so scary. I have some understanding about what happened. It's not present now. And I can look out and orient. There's nothing in my visual field, hopefully, that's actually, and
Right.
that, and so that the patterning, I'm scared or this is terrifying, may be a response to what was happening earlier, but it actually isn't happening right now.
Mhm.
And so then when we can use the distinction between it's not actually happening right now,
Mhm. Mhm.
then we can use what is happening right now to say, well, actually, I'm okay, I'm safe.
Ah, heard. Wow.
But,
Yeah.
but, but let me tell you a story, because this story is helpful in a particular way. There was a time when I had multiple chemical sensitivities. And the multiple chemical sensitivities meant that I was sensitive to like 30 things. And I was traveling, and was staying at a friend's house, and she knew I was dealing with all of this and very generously cleaned the house 4 days before I arrived and put all of the solvents and chemical things in the garage so that the house would have 4 days of airing out before I arrived. So I got there and I was grateful to be there, and she was so lovely. And I went into the bedroom and climbed into bed, and the sheets had been washed in fabric softener. And my system flipped out, just
Mm.
flipped
Mm.
out.
Mm.
And so eventually I pulled the sheets off the bed and I put them in a plastic and I walked them down the hall and I stuck them in a drawer and I closed the door and closed the door and closed the door and I went back into my room, and my system was still like a 5 alarm fire. Like I had just walked through open machine gun fire. Like I was in mortal danger.
Mm. Mm.
So I'm a meditator. I've got tools, and I'm tapping and I'm telling and I'm talking and I'm nothing, no response. And
Mm.
I didn't sleep. And the next morning I had an appointment, and I got on a bicycle that I was borrowing to ride to the appointment. And just a few minutes of using my big muscles to
Ah.
run away from the danger. Few minutes, and my whole nervous system went. So even though, like, I was telling myself, it's fabric softener, it's not dangerous, it's fabric softener, wouldn't have it, not having it, because it was the reptilian brain that was engaged, and the reptilian brain doesn't speak logic. It speaks, get me out of here. That's dangerous and I need to flee. So as
Mm.
soon as I engaged my big muscles and actually fled, then it went, okay,
Wow.
okay, okay. So part of what we need to learn is to speak reptilian.
Mm. Mhm.
That when that part of our system gets activated, we need to learn how to communicate with it. And telling it that it's fabric softener, it's not dangerous, is not what it needs. It needs to know I'm escaping the danger, I'm
Mm.
listening, I'm responding, and then it can relax. So we
Mm.
need to be responsive to what's actually happening
Mm.
and
Mhm.
stay with it until it actually releases. And that's part of it, because it's like, it didn't matter how smart I was. It wasn't having any of it. But the smart was following the intuition, or in that case, it was just the practical circumstances. I needed to get on a bike to get to this place. I got on the bike, and as I was riding my bike, it was astonishing how fast my whole system started to settle. Minutes. And I'd spend hours with every single tool I had at my disposal to zero effect.
Mm.
So when I say these things, what happens for you?
Well, I'm just connecting dots. When I don't know what else to do, I do qigong, except for the exhale, I alternate, but I really tense up, or I really, because I read somewhere there's a technique around exerting. You have to exert yourself. So, and when nothing else works, that's been one of the most effective of just like movement with like really exerting myself. Um, Another thing is just the other day I found a basketball in the park and just for 10 minutes I shot hoops and it was amazing. And I didn't do it hard, but just the repetitive, simple, physical, it chilled me out. I was just like, you know. And then the third thing is I know what you're saying is true by my own experience and other things I've read. There's still an ounce of cognitive dissonance of like, how can the infinite? I'm not so much into non-dual, but that's I have history. I was in a couple non-dual cults, so I respect it, and I have my own words. But like, how can the great mystery, not in and of itself resolve this? So there's still a little cognitive dissonance of like, well, it should be able to, or da da da. But on a practical level, I'm just with you. What you just said about the bike riding just connects to my own experience.
I mean, I think that there is a deep, deep, deep hunger to have an it that can fix it all.
Yes. Yeah.
And on one level, it can, you
Yeah.
know, that when we actually are in that place of relaxing into pure presence, there are no problems in that. It can hold everything. The problem is that all parts of us don't have the same access to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. And so then we need to learn the languages of the different parts.
Mm-hmm.
So the reptilian one would have nothing of it. And so we need to learn reptilian. And then when we learn reptilian and we can speak to that and that whole system settles down, then that opens up our access to the open, expansive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in that space, there is no separation. So I think it depends on where you are standing as to what is actually the way back.
And I'm with you that not all triggers are created equal. Like, yeah, that's I like what you said about, small, medium, large, and then window of tolerance, capacity. Like that's my experience is physically or emotionally, I've had experiences of hell, but I was able to witness it and be like, wow, this is uncomfortable. This sucks, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
But there are some triggers that, and like your example, you weren't in actual danger. There's some triggers that is just like nothing works, and I don't access those things. So um i'm I'm just
But for
sitting with.
my immune system was in danger. So
Mm, mm,
so even though you and I can say, fabric softener objectively is not dangerous, when you're super, super sensitive and you're reacting at everything under
mm,
the sun and you're reacting to fabric softener, it's dangerous. Your immune
mm,
system is acting like something is assaulting you. So that's where
mm,
the dissonance is that from our objective, normal way of looking at it, it shouldn't be dangerous. But what's happening is the body is experiencing it as dangerous. And that's
uh-huh.
what we need to have dialed into because it doesn't matter what it should be. What matters is that it is.
uh, uh, uh. Wow. Hmm.
Is that a good place to leave you for now?
That's you've given me so much food for thought and practice. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Lisa, you've got your hand up.
I was, thank you very much because this is very lively in my own experience. And one of the things that helped me a great deal in is really understanding what the window of tolerance is about. And then the other image was if I know that the nervous system is trying to coordinate everything from the lower body up, to give the brain information about what's happening. And as you say, if something has happened too fast to integrate it, like car accident, everything is happening too fast. You can't even see, your nervous system can't take it in how fast it's happening. Then the place that alarm, that trigger is stored, never updates. So that if anything comes and triggers that particular thing again, you're going to go back to that event as if it is happening now in real time. So that a lot of the help that has to come is about updating those memories, bringing them into the present, and knowing that I am safe now. It can happen with anger and fights. It can happen, where you're just everything, all of the chemicals in your body have been cascaded out to protect you. Then it's going to just take time for them to titrate out. So
part of the reason why trauma therapists are worth their weight in gold,
right,
is because one of the problems with trauma is that we have very easily, we're out of our window of tolerance. And as soon as we're out of our window of tolerance, our capacity for observation goes offline, which means that it's exceptionally difficult to stay with the experience and let it release in a way where we stay effectively safe. We're not experiencing that as safety.
it's because of the structure of the amygdala is what I'm trying to get to. That
So,
place in the brain where this is stored and doesn't get updated. It
so
keeps saying again and again and again.
But what I'm trying to say is that the reason why skilled support is necessary is because to do this yourself is exceptionally difficult. But when you have an observing person who is skilled at having you have access to the memory in just the right amount so that it's available to you so you can release it, but your system is not being flooded with too much that it's starting to crash, then that's where it updates. The tension releases from the system. You experience the body having a safety, even though the thing is running itself through your memory. Go ahead.
And this is, if you take the examples of what wild animals experience when they've been attacked by a predator and have escaped it, what do they do in their bodies? Because they don't have a trauma therapist right handy, right? And exactly this large muscle thing is exactly what they do. There's this whole body convulsion and shaking, and it's this from the top to the bottom. Then they get up and run off, and they're whole and able to protect themselves again. It's fascinating. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Kristen, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, so this is particularly relevant to something that happened to me just this morning, so it's very alive. I had reason now, okay? Lock that one in. That was the problem, I think. To get very angry about two things that are currently happening in our communal household. And I blew off my energy at our driver as I was being driven up to Awakening Heart for my yoga class this morning, which was great. Thank you, Susanna. What happened while I was blowing off this anger at this man who's my friend and is great to talk to is I was watching my anger and saying, this really isn't necessary, Kristen. You could just speak this. But it had me, and I knew better. And I kept watching it saying, Kristen, why are you over behaving? Why are you acting out? Why? And I could not get a handle on it until I got on the yoga mat and it started to subside. which I think was also the physicalness of being present with it, with myself, and letting it kind of effervesce out the windows. What I'm worried about now is, was that just an outburst of ego? Did I just get completely out of control of myself, which is not usual? This was a big, like, people were looking at me like, who's that? What surprised me is that I watched myself misbehaving, was convinced that I needed to do it that way so that I would be heard. And that's just bullshit, I think. I don't know what to do with this. I'm looking back on it as, what was that? Why did I feel so driven? Yeah, that's the end of it. Why was I so driven? What was that?
So that's a really important inquiry. And I can't do that inquiry for you, but I can encourage you to be very gentle and kind. And as you're opening up the inquiry, to recognize that there's some heat there. It's not clear yet why the heat was so strong,
Mm,
but it was there. Okay.
mhm.
And then to see what shows up as, like, what are
Okay,
the pieces that are showing up. Okay.
that's fair. Yeah, that's good. It's in progress. It's working on itself.
That's right.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
don't you don't have to figure it all out this minute.
Oh God, right. That. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Because it's not going to work trying to figure it out anyway. So,
Right. And sometimes things catch us in a way that's just unexpected. I can share a story. I have a friend that I've known now 50 years, and I was a caretaker on his property, and something happened. He said something, and I felt like he was saying my experience had no value. And I was like, blew up in rage all over him, and I didn't even know I was angry until he said something that made it 10 times worse. And then I could tell that I was angry. But the first part of the scorch, I didn't know that I was angry. But what was very interesting to me when I look back was that 2 weeks earlier, my trauma therapist had suggested that I imagine an ideal mom, and I imagined him, not knowing that when you do ideal parent figures, you do not transpose a real person as an ideal person. And then I started to connect the dots. And that's when I realized I've got some attachment wounding here that's acting out. It was actually attachment and narcissistic wounding that had collided, and it exploded. And I had all I knew was I need to do some work. And that was the turning point for me to do my own attachment repair work. And it wasn't until later that I began to understand the narcissistic wound and how those things were connected in my situation. But it also happened that I exploded like molten lava. I didn't even know I was angry. And then it was later that like the pieces of, like, oh, how this all fits together with this bigger picture.
okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Good example. Thank you.
Other comments, impact, questions? Yes, Diane.
First of all, thank you all for sharing your experiences, because I feel that it adds to the richness of the work that we're doing, and we're not in this alone, and it's in this. I mean, I think we've created a kind of a healing relationship. I feel that there's one here already. But Alma, I'm really curious because I've often heard you say about our strategies and coping mechanisms, how brilliant they were, that they got us through, pretty difficult situations and unfair things at a time when we were all really young. And 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 look at we're all here, and we're all relatively okay. So I'm intrigued by that creativity and that intelligence. And I, I'm wondering, and I guess I'm answering my own question as I say this. I think there comes a point when I started to trust that intelligence and that creativity to actually now start working in my favor. And I just wondered if that's something that you have experienced, or if I'm wishful thinking, or this Pollyanna attitude. But
No, absolutely. And part of that is intuition, learning to trust yourself and learning to follow like the next signals and the next signs. And
okay.
so the mechanism that keeps you safe when some basic needs are not getting met, you can redirect it towards a life affirming practice of, well, those needs are getting met. So how do I now work with the strategies so that they're no longer um, showing up in times when they don't serve me any longer?
Okay.
And so it is, but for me, the way that works is by learning to trust my intuition and to be continuously reaffirming that doing things that are life affirming, that really allow my life force energy to flow,
Mm-hmm.
is what I want to put my attention in and what I want to support. And the things
Mm-hmm.
that diminish my life force energy are
Mm-hmm.
things that I don't want to support. And so for me, it operates through the process of intuition and trust and watching and seeing what shows up, you know.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and then because it's, you mentioned the space and the gratitude for everybody sharing, because it creates, you didn't I don't know what words you use, but the words I'm going to use is a field, a healing.
Mm-hmm. I hear. Yes.
But that healing field is internal, it's external, it's in the world, it's in the nature, it's three-dimensional. And
Mm-hmm.
the more that we we feed the field, the more the field takes care of and shows us the next thing that is needed for us to do. So for me, it's not a cognitive process, it's an intuitive one where
Mm.
I let go of my need to control and watch and see what shows up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Kimberly, you've got your hand raised.
Mm. Thank you so much for your talk, and I hope you can hear me over the air conditioner. I yes, I really listened closely to everything you said about narcissistic wounding, and I would love now or later to hear more about the conditions required to look at and to heal that wound, and um, the ways that it intersects with insights into emptiness. I sense in myself a lot of well, just that seems like the right direction to go in, or like a really important and healthy inquiry, because there are times that knowing this is nature is liberating, and also times where, because of that narcissistic wound, there's something that's not quite right there. It's almost like, well, I know this is nature, and so do I have to be here at all? Like it's I don't know if it feels insulting or just painful or exposed or It's hard to describe, but I feel really grateful for your description of of exploring that territory.
Brilliant question. Thank you. It's going to take more than a few minutes to answer. But part of what I did with the relational awakening. So the integrated meditation program cohorts 1 and 2 have combined, and they're in the relational awakening program, where we're moving back and forth between the skill sets that we developed, where we're working with safety, attunement, comfort, delight, encouragement, and the metacognitive capacity to see the way we're thinking, and ideal supports to help leverage those 5 qualities, is that it helps us establish uh, those basic goodness as something that we have easier access to. And then from that basic goodness, having easier access to, our nervous system patterns begin to start reorganizing around secure attachment. So if we weren't securely attached when we were born, we can become earned secure, where it shifts because of these other things that we've done. With that secure attachment, then, and the 5 qualities that we have access to, and then beginning to understand how those are relating to not just things that we visit, but more things of who we are, then that combination gives us the ground where we can start working more with the narcissistic wound. So my guess is that with the relational awakening, it's going to take us a few years to stabilize all those things before we will turn it towards working with the narcissistic wound. I'm in a school. It's taken us 8 years of doing these developmental things before they worked with the narcissistic wound, and the narcissistic wound was an entire year of work, full year, from all kinds of different angles. And for me, it was just absolutely brilliant, just brilliant. So I really appreciated it. And then in terms of like, well, what's the difference between the narcissistic wound and the emptiness that we experience in meditation? The narcissistic wound has a deficiency in it. The emptiness that we experience in meditation has a kind of luminousness in it. It has a sense of spaciousness in it. And so, and it takes a lot to have the capacity to begin to dial into what that deficiency feels like, because it is so uncomfortable, and it is so where we don't want to go, and it is so what we avoid spending our time focusing on. So we have to build the foundation. Then we need to develop like the ego strength, and then we learn how to look at it from different angles, and that helps us see what's the difference between one kind of emptiness and the other kind of emptiness. I wrote a blog post. It's called the Mariana Trench, and it's on the Awakening Truth website, and it's me talking about my own journey with the narcissistic wound.
I will for that and thank you for everything you shared about your process.
Yeah, thank you. Katie.
Thank you so much for the talk. I'm relating so much to everything that's been said, and done a lot of work, therapy, recovery work in addition to Buddhist practice. And there's this part of me that will still go, nothing is working. Why am I still getting, activated by day-to-day things and triggered so easily? And um, have a family trip coming up next week, going to a cousin's wedding. It'll be a large gathering, and usually my sister and I choose not to see our stepdad anymore because of how triggering that is for us, and it always comes out sideways in the body, despite like you can't think your way out of it kind of thing. And so I'm unwilling to miss this wedding, which he's going to be at, because I really want to see all the rest of my family. So I'm choosing to go to the wedding, and the interaction with him can be minimal, but I'm just wondering if there's any advice, like knowing something that's sort of medium range activation is coming up, anything that's helpful to do when it's not a surprise, knowing going into a situation like that?
So it's a really important question, and I would front load. I would front load resourcing. So I would front load time out in nature. I would front load time with a therapist. I would front load time with inquiry buddies. I would front load anything that helps feel you grounded, safe, centered, and able to process the stuff that's going to fairly likely arise. And pace yourself. So if you're going into a situation where there's a large gathering and somebody like that is present, then like make some kind of a mental agreement. You're going, but you're going to be participating in 10% or 15% of the thing, and the rest of it is self-care. So that you organize yourself. Yes, I am going. I have decided I'm doing that, but the way I'm doing it is this way. I will be at this gathering for this amount of time, and the rest of it, I get to take care of myself on my own terms. And be really like clear about what taking care of yourself on your own terms looks like in terms of who are the people, what are the situations, where you're going to be, what kind of food you're going to eat, how you're going to spend your, whether you're going to go to a spa. I mean, whatever it is that you need to help hold and contain and neutralize what is very likely going to be activating. Because as you said, it comes out sideways in your body. So you want to be on like front load. Okay, body, I'm teaming with you. What would you need to get through this as healthily, as safely, as kindly as possible? Like ask your body, how much time can your body manage before it needs to start speaking to you sideways? So you're speaking directly and trying to anticipate what might support you so that you have less sideways kinds of reactions that happen.
Thank you. I'm grateful I could join today.
Wonderful. All right. So I want to wrap up because we're getting like a minute or two away from our time. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining. And I am very grateful that we are able to provide these things without asking a fee for registration so that there's no obstacle for people to be able to attend and hear this because, as some of you have said, it is touching the places that need to be touched. And so there is a website, and the website has a donation. And if you are in New Zealand, it's not easy, but we are going to try and figure out how to make it easy. But the invitation when there's an offering like this that doesn't have a registration fee is just to settle into considering a donation that feels meaningful, generous, and sustainable. And we have meditation and inquiry that's happening also hybrid. If you are in Ahihik, it's going to be in Mara's house, which is right next door to Namaste Village. It'll be from 7 to 8:30 Ahihik time, which is 6 to 7:30 Pacific time. And that's Wednesdays for the next several weeks. And this will be more like a short talk, a short guided meditation, and inquiry buddies, and then a Q&C time afterwards. And one more thing, the integrated meditation program cohort number 4 will be opening as soon as we can get the application updated. We're having some website glitches. But if there's an interest to do this work where you're shifting your attachment, I would recommend you check out the webpage, have a look, because that program is specifically designed to help support this kind of work. So let's just have a word from everybody, or what are you leaving with? Where are you and what are you leaving with? And you could put it in chat. You can open your mic, whatever you wish.
I'm walking away inspired and hopeful. I feel like you've created a very coherent map. Like most of what you've said, I've heard in different places, but I've never heard it connected, and I've never heard it connected with Buddhist psychology and non-duality, or we could just say spiritual awakening. So that's what I'm like. Yeah, there's gratitude, but there's also like, okay, maybe, yeah, I'm feeling safe.
Thank you, Alfred. Carrie says curiosity. Thank you, Carrie. Any other words?
Um, I'm
Lisa?
grateful to be able to see this developing because every chance to practice it and hear how integrated this all is and how relational it all is helping me on my path very much. I'm somebody who came through the integrated meditation program, and I can really vouch for how powerful it is. And now, in going on to its further development, it's just really exciting. And thank you for all you do, Amma.
Thank you, Lisa.
Good to meet you all.
Kristen saying, trusting my intuition, trust the universe that I'm safe now. Katie, releasing energy through movement. Sheila, it's all very new and it's a lot. Diane, appreciate the support and nurture these teachings and community offerings. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. Bye for now.